Hey guys, welcome back. Eric Smith here, Five Reasons Sports contributor, also co-host of Scouting the Fins. You can find that on the Five Reason YouTube channel and also the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast feed. The Dolphins obviously put up a quality effort against the Bills this past week, but they fell short again, taking the record to 0-3. I'm not going to sit here and speculate on how much worse it's going to get, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about what it's going to take to get back to being respectable for the season. But what I will do is we're going to continue to go through the weekly film, and I'm going to put out my weekly grades every week and try to include film breakdowns alongside with that. On the screen here, you can see the 6 linemen who played on Thursday night. Daniel Brunskill replaced Keon Smith early in the third quarter. And I don't think that was injury related. And we're going to get to more on that when we get into those individual grades. For everyone other than Brunskill, their grade from last week is in parentheses. Eventually, that's going to be their season grade, but I had to redo my database over the offseason and just haven't got around to adding the formula for the season to date grades yet. Overall grade came in below average at a 3.48. It was better than last week because that was a 3.02. Still not good enough. 5.00 is the average. Last week we talked about how the grade was extremely low with everyone performing below average. This week it's a little different. It's not just the same old Dolphins every week. We need to be able to step back and look at individual performances. For this week, the guys that we expect to perform well, they performed well. And probably the guy that you figured we could, get by with was exactly that. And then the rest, for lack of a better word, was awful. So now we're going to get into each of those, but we're going to change it up a little bit this week because I think we need some positivity around this team. And we're going to start with the highest graded players first. After a 3.60 last week, there were some who was concerned about Patrick Paul and that we were propping him up a little too much in the preseason. And I'm not going to lie, I questioned it a little bit after watching him against the Patriots, but he bounced back in a big way, coming in at 8.31 this week. I only had 2 negative graded plays, and while it's not an excuse, they were both on concepts that Miami hasn't run much in 2025. So there's reason to believe that he'll continue to clean that up as well. I don't have any film for Patrick Paul this week, but that's not always a bad thing for an offensive lineman. Next up, we're going to have Aaron Brewer, and he had a similar grade to Patrick Paul last week, coming in at a 3.72. He also bounced back, but maybe not as far. Brewer's more of a boom or bust player than Patrick Paul is. I haven't looked at the PFF grades, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Brewer graded higher than Paul by PFF. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's wrong. It's just that PFF grades the boom plays with more weight than I do, where I just rather have someone who executes every play at a solid level. Brewer had a total of 5 plays that were marked down in my grading. Only one of those was being, a full zero. Everything else was partial credit at least. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that most of our film review is going to be on Aaron Brewer, and that's because of how many things his athleticism allows this team to do. All right, first one here for Brewer. I think it's something we've seen in the past. It's a wrinkle off of a power concept. So if this was the traditional power play, we would get backside tackle sealing off. We would get the center blocking back on the one technique. We would get a double team into a combo block, the backside linebacker, getting a seal here with the tight end, and then we're pulling the guard around to this front side linebacker. But this is, as the play starts, you're going to see that is what it looks like. But we're going to get Brewer leaking out here on a screen pass. I include this because this is one of those examples of plays that Brewer is able to add to the menu. And you can see that he's able to get out there, get a good block on number 8, and get some extra yards there, or help get some extra yards. But again, if we take this back to the beginning and watching the steps these linemen are taking, Brewer is stepping back to that one tech. Borum is stepping inside to seal the edge. left guard, left tackle, working to the double team, and then would eventually work to the combo block. Tanner Connor is sealing the end, and then you get Keon Smith pulling around, who would get 42 um, if it was a power play. So you can see how it very much looks like it's supposed to be a power play, even though they've already taken the running back out of it. But now they're leaking Brewer out here, and you know, included because it's a good play for Brewer. But the more that I think about this, I kind of wonder what the point of it is. You know, maybe if you have a Lamar Jackson or a Justin Fields or, you know, Josh Allen, right? Maybe this makes sense because you could run quarterback power off of this. Um, but it kind of makes me wonder, like, why are we running this concept if we're shuffling the running back out of there and there's no threat of a run? So, you know, I guess just kind of the things that go through my mind as I'm watching these. But in the end, the reason that I included it was because of Aaron Brewer and the stuff that he adds to the offense, to the menu that you can run. And then next one here, so this is going to be outside zone to the right, and we could get stuck on Larry Borum getting pushed into the backfield or Julian Hill not able to get up on number 8. But instead what I want you to watch is Aaron Brewer here, able to get off the ball, able to cut off that linebacker, and not just cutting him off. Like, I just love the way that he finishes every single play that he does. And then kind of getting back to the menu of plays that Brewer opens up, or the menu of concepts and protections. Here is a center trap concept. So, you know, we have seen the Dolphins run this with the guards, where they'll pull around and pick up the end and everybody else just blocking backside. But in this case, it's the same concept, except for now it's the center that's pulling outside and everybody else is blocking backside. And if you follow me on X, you've seen me kind of talk about wanting the Dolphins to do this more in the run game. You know, if you kind of merge the power play that we saw earlier, a couple plays ago, with this, I would like to see the Dolphins do this more in the running game, where they loop Brewer behind and bring him through as the lead on power. But thought this was a step in the direction of what I would like to see the Dolphins do with Brewer a little bit, to see him be able to, you know, pull around the guard sometimes. And here's that same concept. This one was in the fourth quarter. And, you know, here, not a great job by Brewer. You know, I would not envision Brewer as the type of player that I want blocking on the edge on pass plays. So not something I want to see happen often. Ideally, plays like this, the ball is out here. You can see that Tua makes an adjustment and gets the ball out to Julian Hill. But I like the creativity and the way that they're using Brewer in this game. And then last one for Brewer here. Again, this is one of those things that having an athletic center opens up. We've covered this on X, on YouTube a bunch of times. This is a counter reverse is what the play is called. Miami, in their playbook, calls this dope. And it works fairly often for Miami. You know, they run it once every couple of weeks probably. And in this case, this was in the fourth quarter. This was 3 minutes and 54 seconds to go. This was literally the play before Tua threw the back-breaking interception. But what I want you to look at here is, again, Brewer being able to get out here in space, and a little bit of a mix-up here. We get both Brewer and Julian Hill in space. You can see that both of them are looking to 47. Then they both look to 7, and then they both go to 47. 7's able to make that tackle. You know, just kind of those what-if scenarios that, you know, had one of them picked up 7, one of them picked up 47, then as Malik Washington is getting around the edge here, then he can get vertical. He's one-on-one with number 24 between him and a touchdown that would have tied the game up. And we don't even have to have the conversation about, you know, the Tua interception. So, you know, just one of those what-if scenarios. Funny how this game works sometimes, but wanted to include it in the Brewer portion just because, you know, highlighting his athleticism again, but also, you know, calling out some of the assignment issues that this offense has had. And then next up is Larry Borum. Oops, wrong way. There we go. Coming in at a 4.78, was a little better than his grade last week of a 4.39. in a lot of ways the same. Overall, Larry Bourne's a player that you'd expect to grade right around average or below average, but also the type of player that you can get away with if he's the main backup in the lineup. And of course, he's not right now. On the positive side, of the 7 negative grade plays that I had for Borum, only one was a full -0 grade. And I'm not sure whether it's relevant or not, but only one of those 7 came after Daniel Brunskill entered the game. That's not necessarily an endorsement for Brunskill, as we'll see here in a little bit. But I'm not sure whether for Borum that had to do with some instant chemistry between him and Brunskill, or because they were just sliding protection to Brunskill's side a little more once he entered the game. I don't have any film for Larry Borum, although there is one play that I remember from when I was grading where it was a zone run to the left side, but Larry Borum did a great job of collapsing the backside of the defense for a cutback lane. Kind of gave me a warm reminder of what it was like to have Austin Jackson in the run game. And that's going to bring us to the guards. So before I show the grades, we need to talk about the grading system. It's a 0 to 10 scale, and that's because my experience has showed that that scale tends to be received better by viewers than just giving the raw grades. A 5.00 is the average grade, but it is a bit of a sliding scale. It's designed to adjust with how well or how bad the line performs over time to, at least in my mind, give an accurate representation of how the line is performing in compared to what we've seen from them in the past. So with that in mind, there is logic that's built in that removes the same percentage of plays from the top and the bottom of the scale. I did it this way to try to avoid some of the outliers, particularly on the negative side from skewing the grades. And the consequences for that is that we can get grades that are below that threshold, but may not necessarily be the worst grades that I've ever assigned, if that makes sense. And to further explain what I'm trying to articulate here, I have explained in the past that the backbone of the grading system is the raw grades, which are added up and divided by the number of snaps graded. So heading into week 3, an average grade for an offensive lineman was 93.41%. And the threshold for the lowest grade is an 86.11%. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a massive difference between the average and a 0 grade. But over time, it still paints a good picture. In this game, all 3 of the guards received a 0 grade. But when I share the raw grades, which I don't usually do, Jonah Savainaya came in at a 85.83. Daniel Brunskill was a 85.42. And Keon Smith was a 85.29. None of those grades are good grades, but I just want to be able to, paint a picture that they are all less than 1% away from having a gradable performance. And that's one play that was marked as a partial negative being marked as acceptable, or one awful play being changed to half credit. And again, these were all bad performances. They were worse than a typical Liam Eichenberg outing. But I don't want to overblow this into something that says that these guards are failing at 50% of the reps. They are, tough to say this because I know it's going to sound like Chris Greer, right? But they are closer to being acceptable than some may think, but they do need to get much better. So with that out of the way, let's jump into some film review on the guards. One of the things I've been asked about in the past when talking about what ways the protection is being slid is what determines that. And sometimes it's where you want to give a player more help. Like I feel like had James Daniels been at right guard, we'd have slid help to Jonah a lot more often than we've been able to. Sometimes it's based on, where they feel like the pressure may be coming up, or maybe it's based on which side the running back will be helped on. But, sometimes it comes down to, where's the dude on defense? And against the Bills, that dude was number 92, Daquan Jones. And we're going to see here that both times his protection is slid to his side. But Daquan Jones was having his way with these guards the entire day. So that's him rushing from the left side against Jonah. And then this was very next play. Now he's on the right side against Keon Smith. And you can see that almost the exact same thing, right? Swiping the hands down, able to turn that corner to the outside where it's more difficult for Aaron Brewer to help out. But just kind of showing that to show that sometimes it's about a player that you are shifting protection to, and in this game, seemed very much that was Daquan Jones. And that kind of brings us to the interception. As we've seen on the Twitter timeline, both guards were really awful here, and we can see that again. They are sliding protection to Daquan Jones' side. We see the hump move that Reggie White made famous, but because they're sliding Brewer in that direction, they're able to neutralize that some. When we look at the right side, so now you got Daniel Brunskill, who filled in for Keon Smith. Can't say that he was a whole lot better overall. In this case, we're looking at a rookie, Deion Walker, out of Kentucky. And this guy I put on the Twitter timeline. He reminds me a lot of a Jordan Phillips, the old Jordan Phillips from the Dolphins. The type of player that will get kind of lazy throughout the game, will give up some run lanes, but every once in a while we'll have some of these big-time flash plays. And this is just one of those examples that kind of mentioned earlier, that if James Daniels is in the lineup, then we're sliding protection over here to the left. We're helping Jonah with Daquan Jones, and we've got James Daniels over here on the right side, able to handle business one-on-one. But because Jonah has been struggling early this season, and we're now down to the third right guard that we're trying to, get something out of, this is the kind of stuff that opens you up to. So just unfortunate situation where we have to help both guards, but we can only do that with one, and the Bills were able to take advantage of it. And wherever you place the blame on the interception, this was not a good performance from either of the guards. And then earlier, I think we talked about the kind of the final straw for Keon Smith, and this is where I felt that it happened. This was in the second quarter. It was the first drive of the second quarter. I think it was the second play. I think they ended up going 3 and out here. But if we're watching Keon Smith here as the right guard, we are going to get a outside zone to the left. And we wind this back and we look at how these assignments should be going through. I think we have those two working out. We've got Jonah here. We've got Ingold leading up to that front side linebacker. And then we're going to have Brewer climbing up to the backside linebacker, which should put Keon Smith there and Larry Borum either working there or there. I forget where he goes. But this one here is the key. Brewer is working up to that linebacker. And what we end up getting on the backside here, right? Brewer works that front side to make sure that that tackle's not spiking to the inside, but you can see his eyes get back to his linebacker. Ingold is leading up to that front side linebacker, which means that there is no reason that Keon Smith should also be going to this linebacker. Instead, we end up with 3 guys all going after number 8, because Brewer, who is the one that I think should have him, is peeling back. Larry Borum from the backside, I'm fairly okay with this one because idea there is if he can get to that linebacker, would love for him to take that linebacker. If not, then we're picking up a safety at the next level. But you have Keon Smith here, who also feels like he's supposed to get to that linebacker, and he's climbing to the linebacker instead of walling off that backside defender. In another situation where not losing something physically here, right, but just from an assignment error, now this defensive tackle is able to pursue down the line and eliminate what could have been a big play. Another situation where we are one player doing their job from getting Devon Acham one-on-one with a safety in the hole and a whole lot of green behind him. And then last one here for the film review. Want you to watch Jonah and Brunskill. Would have liked to see things get better, and they did at points with Brunskill, but at times they were not. And here we just kind of get a almost a comical play where Jonah and Brunskill collide. And I think if I'm looking at this correctly, this was supposed to be either a long trap or a power concept here, where we are looking to wall off everybody blocking down here, right? And I think that something like that, right? And then we were supposed to have Jonah coming around to lead through on the power part of it, but this is what happens when you have Brunskill, who hasn't played much guard, is now asked to do it. Jonah is used to a certain path that he's able to take to get around. And as Brunskill is stepping down here, you can see that him and Jonah are colliding, right? Where I think that, Keon Smith and James Daniels are maybe pressing into this two technique defensive tackle a little more and creating a little more vertical movement that allows Jonah to get through. But because we have two guards that haven't played together, one of those a guy that's played more center than anything, then when you're talking really inches a lot of times when it comes to being able to have that clearance for these guys to get through, you're going to have some hiccups like this. And this is one that, if Brunskill is the starting right guard next week, I think that we'll see improvement in stuff like this. Like, hopefully, we don't see this particular issue again. But this kind of reinforces the idea that just because somebody's playing bad in the game, right? It's not always just a instant upgrade to throw somebody else in, because you're going to, lose chemistry, lose landmarks, lose a lot of stuff. And I don't know what the right answer right now is between Keon Smith and Daniel Brunskill, but can't be any worse than this. All right. As we wrap up here, I'm questioning my decision to start out on a high note because I feel like we're leaving on a down note. But in the end, we could put out a laundry list of reasons the Dolphins lost against the Bills. These videos are mostly focused on the offensive line, and they should definitely be part of that list. The Dolphins are, in the middle of somewhat of a mini bye before they play the Jets on Monday night. At the very least, it's nice to see that the team didn't quit against the Bills, and we were able to see some competitive football against a good team. If they can continue to do that, there can still be some brighter days ahead this season. For now, let's just try to hope for some individual improvements to help make the future look a little brighter, especially hoping that Jonas Savaianaya can figure some things out. I appreciate you guys leaving comments below to let me know how you're feeling about this offensive line. Make sure you tune in later this week when Anthony Testino gives his breakdown of the defensive performance. He's going to have some good stuff like he usually does. And as always, thanks for watching.